Who's got it better than us?
Your home for the best sports coverage in Utah. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone. The Jazz acquisition of Jaren Jackson Jr. continues to be the biggest story in town. So joining us now to talk about it, he covers the Grizzlies for the Memphis Commercial Appeal. He's Damichael Cole with us here on Jake and Ben. Damichael, thanks for a few minutes. How are you doing?
Hey, guys, I'm surviving. Another trade deadline here in Memphis, and as you guys can see, it's been pretty busy, but we're getting through it.
Yeah, this is a different type of trade deadline for the Grizzlies, who have traditionally tried to be a buyer for the last couple of deadlines, and then they moved off of Desmond Bane over the summer, and then obviously now Jaren Jackson Jr. So give us some background on what you know about Jaren Jackson Jr. and the type of person and player the Jazz are getting.
Oh, man, I mean, I don't know where to start. I mean, there's two kind of, pathways you can go down there where you're talking about the person. Jaren was as involved in the Memphis community as, any player in my time, without a doubt. I used to joke, with people, around there that he was like the unofficial spokesperson for the Grizzlies. At the beginning of the season when a player has to get the mic and go to half court and, thank the fans for their support, it was Jaren Jackson Jr. every year. At the end of the season when the player has to do that, it was Jaren Jackson Jr. On MLK Day when the Grizzlies play, it's Jaren, thanking the fans, talking about the importance of MLK Day. He has his own foundation, Jaren Jackson Jr. Foundation, where it's basically just, it's a kind of an ode to the way he grew up. He grew up with a father who played in the league. He also grew up with a mother who's now, working with the WNBA Players Association. So he's kind of brought up in this professional setting where he understands the business. He understands, his duty, I guess you could say, as a player who has a platform, who has a voice. And he's real good with those things on the floor, transitioning more to the basketball side. You're getting a player who, he notable flaws, but he has notable strengths as well. With his strength, I mean, he has pretty much improved every single year of his career, becoming a more all-around offensive player. He's getting to whether he's getting to the basket. When he's playing the 4, he's usually stronger than guys. When he's playing the 5, he's usually quicker on the offensive end. He hasn't been recording as many blocks as usual in recent years, but the other underrated part of his defense is his hands. He gets a lot of steals, deflections, and things like that. You'll see when guys drive to the basket on him, he'll reach every now and then and knock the ball loose. So, he's an all-around defender. Of course, the two weaknesses that a lot of people point to with Jaren is, he's often been in foul trouble over the course of his career. And then, of course, the rebounding. But I've learned that in the time covering the Grizzlies, when you pair him with someone who's a high-quality rebounder, you kind of minimize, those weaknesses a little bit. The Grizzlies, you remember when they were at their best, they had Steven Adams. In a smaller sample size when he played alongside of Zach Edey, we saw those similarities as well. So when you pair him, with a big who can, where rebounding doesn't have to be the main focus for him, where he can play the 4 spot instead of the 5. I think he maximized Jaren's skill set.
I'm curious, the fans around here, Damichael, are seeing this as a signal that the rebuild is over and that they're going to get back to competing for playoffs next year. And I'm curious, as somebody, you don't cover the Jazz, obviously, but as somebody who covers the NBA, I'm curious to what you think about his fit with this current Jazz team. You mentioned he likes, playing against another big, Jazz with Walker Kessler, Lauri Markkanen, obviously, Ace Bailey, the young rookie. Curious to your thoughts on how this fits for the Jazz. Well,
the good is, again, you can pair him with Kessler and Markkanen, and I think he fits right in that group. He's very skilled. He can play on the perimeter. When Walker Kessler is in foul trouble, you can slide him to the 5 in stretches. He did that in Memphis, a large part of his career, and he can play at the 5 and take advantage of mismatches there as well. So I think it's a strong fit, from that standpoint. I think Keontae George, because of his ability to shoot the basketball a little bit better than Ja, will be probably a better kind of, partner from that standpoint where, Ja and Jaren's kind of inconsistent shooting abilities kind of made it tough at times for those two to kind of mesh really well. If you want to hear the downside, I'd say that, I think, when we talk about Utah, Lauri Markkanen isn't kind of renowned for his passing ability. And I remember as Ace Bailey was coming through the draft process, that wasn't a big thing, for him either. And Jaren Jackson Jr., has pretty much throughout the most of his time in Memphis has graded out as one of the, in the bottom tier of the league in playmaking. So you'll see a lot of times against the Grizzlies, teams will bring, double teams, from the weak side. They'll blitz them. And, sometimes he'll turn the ball over. Sometimes he'll pass out of it, but it's usually sometimes not the right pass. And sometimes he just says, screw it. I'm just going to try to score over it. But he still hasn't developed, as a strong playmaker. If you look at his numbers over the course of the years, you'll see several seasons where he averaged more turnovers than assists. So I'm looking at the fact that, Ace Bailey, Lauri Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr., three guys not really known for their playmaking ability is probably going to put a lot on Keontae George.
Continuing with that, where do you think Jaren Jackson is most comfortable as far as like being a go-to scorer? Lauri Markkanen's almost 28 points a game. He's kind of the number one option for the Jazz. Is Jaren Jackson best as a number two best scorer? Is he best as a number three? How do you think he approaches that and how he views it also?
Yeah, 2 or 3 is the best. Right. I mean, if you have him as your third option, man, that's a big win. But like this season, for example, while Ja's been out, the Grizzlies have gone to Jaren a lot in those clutch time situations, and the numbers haven't been good. He's not graded out as a good, scorer in clutch time moments this year. He's been actually one of the league's worst in that category. But if you go over the course of Jaren's career and you look at his numbers in isolations, he's actually been really good, so he's usually at his best when you can give him the ball, top the key. He can use that. Again, he's a 6'10", 6'11" guy with wiggle and strength. So when he has that smaller guy on him, he can be physical and use his left hand, use his right hand. And when he has the bigger guy on him, I think of, a guy who's in Utah now, Joseph Nurkic, when he was with the Phoenix Suns. I know that was a matchup that Jaren kind of dominated a couple times that season just because of his quickness and his ability to just slide by him and just get to his spot. So, as long as he's not a number one option, I think it'll be fine. And, again, if he's a number 3 option, that's even better.
Damichael Cole is with us, covers the Grizzlies for the Memphis Commercial Appeal. And, Damichael, I've got to give you a compliment for a man who's obviously got to be glued to his phone, watching for text messages about Ja Morant, and doing a radio interview in Salt Lake at the very same time. You are killing it. So the question we want to know is Ja going to move?
Look, at this moment, the only thing I could say is it's looking more and more unlikely, but keep an eye on this situation with Giannis. That's kind of what I've been told. This Giannis situation, now that he's staying in Milwaukee. Milwaukee was one of the teams very early on when, it was reported that the Grizzlies were listening to offers on Ja. Milwaukee was one of the teams that reached out very early on in the process. So that is a team that potentially could circle back here. And but the Grizzlies have been very firm. Like, one thing about the Grizzlies is they will not trade if they don't think it's even. They don't care about the optics of what things look like. If they don't feel like they're getting the value that they want, they'll say, fine, we won't do it. And, so far that seems to be the case here, where it clearly would be a weird situation if Ja's back, given, the trades that just were made. Man, they're going to play hardball. But I think Milwaukee is a team to watch in this closing stretch here.
The Jazz are going to be keeping an eye on the Memphis Grizzlies to close the season because they are the next closest team, I believe, in the West, or right there when it comes to the tanking, the lottery standings. And now, obviously, Memphis is going to be trying to get that pick as high as possible. That said, they keep winning these weird games. They won last night. How is Memphis going to approach this? Is it going to be an all-out tank? Are they going to be resting players to make sure they lose as much as possible, or are they just going to let this play out?
I think it'll start soft. It'll be a little soft tank at first, and then they'll embrace it. As the season goes on here. They got some key players out right now like Zach Edey, John Morant. If he stays past the deadline, they'll probably tell those guys, just get your rest, and I think they'll position themselves well to get somewhere in the range of getting a top 8 pick.
What can you tell us about John Conchar and Vince Williams?
Two defensive-minded guys, but in different ways. They're both actually really good rebounders. I think what comes to mind with John Conchar is instincts, right? I often compare him to a free safety in football when watching him play basketball, because you'll see plays like when the opposing team is inbounding the ball and a guy, like he comes over there and he just can anticipate where the ball is going and he'll like knock it away or something like that. He's really good at those little instinctual things. John Conchar is. Offensively, he's not going to give you a lot. He's going to offensive rebound. He's going to knock down an occasional shot, but he's not going to give you a lot offensively. Vince Williams, he kind of grew into a playmaker a little bit more this season with the Grizzlies having all the injuries at point guard, but his shooting, kind of plummeted, as a result of that. He's coming into the league, he was known as kind of more of like a 3-and-D guy. He's had some foot injuries over the last couple seasons where he still, to this day hasn't really been 100%. So if you get 100% Vince Williams, it's a steal, because he at his best, if you go back a couple years ago, he was guarding Kevin Durant, he was guarding Luka Doncic, and all those guys were giving him praise. But as he's kind of navigated through these foot injuries the last couple seasons, he's kind of lost a little bit of a step, and it's been tough on him.
Damichael, we know it's a crazy day for you, so we can't thank you enough for carving out a few for us. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right, take care, guys.
Thanks, Damichael. Damichael Cole covers the Grizzlies for the Memphis Commercial Appeal.
We talked about this bench unit for the Jazz being basically a total mystery, Coming back next year, you do still have Isaiah Collier under contract, and Cody Williams, and Bryce Sensabaugh, and Kyle Filipowski, and Svi Mikhailuk, even though his deal is non-guaranteed. Now you've got Vince Williams, who's on a non-guaranteed deal, and John Conchar. I think the Jazz are going to be looking for experience. I think they're going to be looking for defensive players. And so I think Vince Williams probably has a pretty realistic chance to stick around. I mean, that's a guy that's already on a small contract, and if he can offer, something different that the rest of these players can't, he can be really valuable. The same could be said for Conchar, who's owed $6 million next season. So be curious who actually is still on the roster. I don't think anyone with an expiring deal should be really expected to be around. And that might include Yusuf Nurkic, unless you can bring him back for a steal. But the Jazz aren't going to want to go into next year with just only a bunch of young guys coming off the bench, because they want to make the playoffs, and you can't lose a run in the playoffs because your second unit players aren't ready. They don't matter enough, truthfully, to hold you up like that.
Stay tuned. We'll wrap up the show coming up next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.